Hello everyone, Flandre here. Today we are going to fix the various shit that's broken on my Humvee. In particular, we have issues with the power steering. It's leaking fluid all over the place. There's other various odds and ends that need to be done, like this was originally USMC, a Humvee, so it was designed for forwarding water. It has a deep water forwarding kit that was originally installed on it, and during the demill process they removed a bunch of that stuff, like the pressurized lines and whatnot, so some of those components were removed. Now we just have open lines that need to have components and valves and stuff put onto them so it'll work again. You know, there are various small things that need to be fixed because they were abused and used by the military, and they grunts don't give a shit about the vehicles that they are issued to them. So I have to fix everything on it now. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I removed the old batteries. Old batteries, of course, are your 6TL30 batteries. They're pretty massive, very expensive. These didn't work at all. I tried charging them. They didn't hold a charge. They wouldn't start the vehicle at all. So I went ahead and bought new batteries. So here is the battery box. It is under the passenger seat. As you can see here, I threw the passenger seat to the side as I needed access to the battery box, and it's two 12-volt automotive batteries. There's really nothing special about it. You wire them in such a way where they output 24 volts. So I went ahead and just bought group 24. These are 24 MS2-6. These, of course, are the marine spec type batteries that are typically used in boats and things of that nature. But the idea here is that they have 1000 marine cranking amps, which is about 800 cold cranking amps, which is about the same as what the Humvee old batteries were. Of course, they're a lot cheaper. I think these were like $80 a battery. And of course, they have a longer warranty, and they don't have as much capacity, but of course, I'm not starting these in sub-zero temperatures, so I'm not really concerned about capacity. I'm not running a bunch of peripherals out of these, so it's really just being used to start the engine. It should be noted, however, that the commercial battery posts don't actually, these Humvee battery clamps don't actually clamp down tight enough on them. At least I couldn't get them to. So I'm going to replace those with commercial ones. And there we go. We have our commercial battery terminals installed now, and everything wired up the way it was originally, just with these commercial 12-volt batteries. Probably going to cover up the terminals somehow so they're at least protected, and go from there. So first things first, power steering is leaking pretty bad. Just my luck that I always have power steering issues apparently, but I think, I'm not sure, because when I drive it, it actually works fine. So I think it's just leaking somewhere. The other thing that is wrong in the engine bay here is, if you see here, there is this piece here was just cut out. That is a valve that connects. It's supposed to be sitting here. It's supposed to be connected to this hose here, and that is the remainder of the valve that they just essentially cut out. They didn't actually properly remove it for some reason. That was also part of the deep water forwarding system, and they determined that to be a tactical use, and so they cut it out. So this, when the Humvee is running, it'll literally just be spewing mist everywhere. So it's just all this vapor is just coming out of this hose here. So I need to get that valve and reinstall it. Fortunately, I live down the road from a couple part warehouses that actually keep large stock of Humvee parts, so I can just drive down and pick up the parts. I also need to get a mirror for the driver's side as well, so I'm just going to drive down there and get those parts. So I drove down and got the parts I needed. So there's the valve I needed, and I went ahead and got the driver's side mirror, got that installed pretty easy. It's literally just bolt here in a spacer, a bolt here in a spacer, and it just bolts into place, and then you just adjust it as needed. So mirror is done. I can now see on the left side here, on the driver's side here. So now I just got to install this part here, and that is going to have to go into that right there. Of course, it's easier to access it from the inside engine compartment bay, so I have removed the engine cover here so that I can very easily access the old cut valve piece here, remove that out, and then we'll install our new one. So I will go ahead and do that. There is a hole in the mounting bracket here that allows me to put my wrench through so I can undo the hose clamp and get this piece out easier. So you can see it just goes in like that, and I just need to rotate it appropriately and get that unscrewed. Okay, I believe I got it loose enough, so I don't actually have to take the hose clamp off, but just loose enough. There we go, so I can pop the piece out here. So yeah, they just basically just cut it off for whatever reason, no idea why. Okay, so coming from the top now, I got that through, ended up needing both my hands to get it into that pipe. Same thing here, just gonna get that into place and clamp it down with some new hose clamps. Ended up needing both my hands, but I got the valve in and it's through the pipe here. Just need to kind of clamp everything down and make sure it's all properly seated, and then get the other side done. Other side should be fairly simple, just getting that over, putting a new hose clamp on it, and tightening it down. Okay, so hose is on, hose clamp is clamped down, that is secure. Just gotta do the other one, and we're done. I'll need to get some bolts. I don't have the right length, so I'll have to go to Ace Hardware and pick some up. But other than that, everything else is good to go. Conveniently enough, the bolts on the old battery terminals actually were the same size and long enough to fit into the tapered or the tapped mount here, so screwed in the valve just fine. I didn't have to go to Ace Hardware. And I'm leaking a lot of fuel. I don't know where the leak is, but it's dripping down from up there somewhere. Gotta figure out where. Okay, so I was looking around and I found where the leak is coming from. It's right there. You can see it's dripping off of the line there from the fuel filter. So I just gotta pull this fuel filter line here and replace it or tighten it down. I'll probably just replace it. Okay, so you can see here I pulled the line off of the fuel filter there, and we can just see on the line itself it has a big old hole in it. So that's why it was leaking gas. So I'm gonna have to pull this whole line out and replace it. Okay, so this line goes through here and through here and connects to this bleed off valve here. So I just gotta pull all that out and replace it. Okay, so fuel line is installed. I changed the angle at what it sat on because I feel like the angle that it was previously sitting on basically allowed it to break or cut that hole into it. And the reason is because it was really angular. And I think the angle that it had originally, which it tied into this part right here, the line fed through here and then it came out and into there. at such an angle where it was very tight against the nipple, and that allowed the nipple in the fuel filter to dig into the line, which I think ultimately caused it to break through and cause that hole. Because the original line itself was actually looked really clean and new. There's no dry rot on it. There was just a hole that was in right on the corner where the nipple was. So I think the nipple digging into the line caused it to break open. So I changed the angle at which this sits at, so a little more loose. So hopefully that won't happen again. So replacing the power steering line is pretty easy. There's one line here that goes through this little channel underneath the radiator, comes out right here, and that connects to this part of the radiator, and then there's this elongated part on the radiator. I already pulled that hose off as well. I have a brand new one right here that I need to connect to it, and this hose I need to feed down there to that nipple. So I pulled the original off, and now I'm just putting this new one in place so it'll work. Okay, so with the lines reattached for the power steering cooler, and I went ahead and cleaned everything off. Used some brake cleaner just to like get all the oil off or all the power steering fluid out, and cleaned it off so I can see if it leaks again. Did that on all the connections, dried everything off as well as I could, and we will see if that does the trick. It looks a little filthy. Could use a replacement. So I'll probably replace the power steering fluid at some point. I'm just going to see if I can't bleed it for now, see if everything works, and then I'll worry about replacing the fluid a little bit later. Okay, got the Humvee jacked up, so now I can freely move the tires back and forth like this. Just taking the steering wheel here, turning it around, and the wheels move freely as it's in the air. And what that should do is bleed it. Basically, bubbles will start coming up on the power steering reservoir and get all that air out of the lines there. So just going to keep moving it back and forth, holding it all the way right and all the way left for a few seconds, and do that about 40 times and see if that gets all the air out. Got about 15 times right now in it. As you can see, the power steering fluid's really starting to overflow out of the pan right now. And you can really see the bubbles that are forming on the top there as the air is coming out of the power steering system. Moment of truth. Got the Humvee back on the ground, and we're going to start this thing up. As we can see, the power steering fluid is definitely a lot lower. It drops even more when the vehicle is turned on. And the power steering still wasn't working great. And we got a really bad leak coming out of the radiator. So it appears that the power steering radiator cooler here is in fact busted. So I will have to take that apart. And honestly, I just need to replace the entire radiator, including the one here. It's pretty bad condition, so probably have to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I was talking to a bunch of guys, and they were basically saying that the radiator and the cooler here for The power steering is more so for if you're doing like heavy off-roading or basically really heavy duty stuff or running a bunch of accessories. It doesn't really need as much excessive cooling as it has. So I went ahead and just got this commercial one for now until I can fix the regular one or buy another Humvee spec one. Some guys were literally saying just to run a male-to-male 3/8 inch adapter to the hoses, and that, you know, have no cooling at all, and that should be good enough. But I decided may as well just attach it to something until I can fix the original. So now I just need to bleed this thing again, and I should have all my leaking problems solved now. It's oil change time. So get under here, get a pan under there so we can drain the oil into. Let's crawl under.
بين العصر والمغرب مرت لمة خيال مرت لمة خيال وعرابة فرس وليفي لمها شقرة وميال لمها شقرة وميال يا القبيلة لا تضربني لا تضرب كسرت الخيزران كسرت الخيزران صار لي سنة وست شهر من ضربتك وجعان من ضربتك وجعان والله لنصب مرجوح من اسطوحي لسطوح من اسطوحي لسطوح اللي يقولوا حرامي روحي متعلقة بروح روحي متعلقة بروح.
Okay, so I jacked up the rear here with the big old boy so that the Humvee itself would essentially be able to promote the flow of oil down the oil pan and into the oil draining thing there. So that levels things out a little more since I don't have a level driveway, and I should be able to go ahead and plug everything back up and fill this thing up with oil.
بين العصر والمغرب شذب من قال عوف والنار ولو حطوا بدرب النار بين العصر والمغرب انا طير وياك يبا هم تحط ولزمنا بين العصر والمغرب.
Alright, give them a run, John, give them a run. When the music is in drop, we don't run. Fire links, take the dance and outfits.
بين العصر والمغرب.
Alright, Congressmen team up with Jules Land. Take a medical, we walk on, take the gang. Lock the river bed, now the sea part.
بين العصر والمغرب.
I had to destroy that thing to get it out. Okay, brand new oil filter here. There we go. The oil filter is installed. Of course I have a funnel and I fuck up and still spill oil everywhere.
والله موت وياك وقبل ما اموت اصيح موت احب الشيء.
Okay, so we're actually low. So we'll have to add more fluid in here, or more oil in here, and then we should be pretty much good to go. Okay, now that we have all our oil in place, let's go ahead and make sure our oil pressure is all good. Everything looks good to go. I'll go ahead and check to make sure there's no leaks, and then we're solid on the oil. Next up is just finishing up flushing out all the coolant. Next thing we're going to do is drain coolant here. So as you can see here, there's the front of the vehicle, and follow along back here, and there is that little plug there, which should allow the coolant to come out. So hopefully I can drain it into here.
スーパーアイドルの笑顔よりもあの8月の午後よりも105セルシウスとより光る君へ可愛いと言えるなら転んでもすぐ笑う君は夢は遠いはずなのに指差した星が近づいた優しい風吹いて隣以上もっと近く二人なら大丈夫そう言ったらスーパーアイドルの笑顔よりもあの8月の午後よりも105セルシウスとより光る君へ
Okay, so I've let it drain out pretty good. Let the engine run a little bit so we can get the coolant flowing out and through here. So we're going to close it back up.
一人きりじゃない歩いてゆこうすべてを忘れ恋をして105セルシウスとより光る君へ一人きりじゃない歩いてゆこう答えを求め恋落ちて105セルシウスとより光る君へ一口ハッピーラッキー一口大好きねえねえ可愛いと言えるなら転んでもすぐ笑う君は夢は遠いはずなのに指さした星が近づいた優しい風吹いて隣以上もっと近く二人なら大丈夫そう言ったらきっと大丈夫だスーパーアイドルの笑顔よりもあの8月の午後よりも105セルシウスとより光る君へ
And that, my friends, is how you fix the power steering and all their various components like fuel lines and diagnosing all the different random issues that your government surplus Humvee had when you bought it from the auction house. I want to give a huge shout out to Dakota Woods for kind of helping me out on this project. He was a great source of information. If I had any questions, I just pinged him and he was able to give me answers that no one else really had most of the time. I also had some military friends who were very familiar with Humvees as they had been working on them and were mechanics in the military, and they also gave me some pointers as well. And I greatly appreciate their help as well as needed. Most of them were anons on 4chan that I've been associated with for some years. I hope you all found this informative. So as always, have a good one.
Ты говоришь, что в моих венах течет северный ветер, пусть я младший тебе по плечо. Я твой на свете самый страшный губительный шторм. На всей планете не найдешь ты утешения в другом. Любовь не сказка, многочисленная бессмысленных книг. Она опасна, я согласна с тобой. Вместе в тупик, вместе на рабство. Боль напрасно, моя жертва. Так что ж, закон негласный разрешает тебе взять в руки нож. Так рви, сердце не жалей, руби. Пусть рекой прольется фон моей любви. Так рви, только дай коснуться губы. Без сомнения слова свои и чувства отзови, отзови. Коль не любишь, отзови. Ты беззаботного ребенка рука, а я крапива, и пусть льется слез невинных река. Зато красиво багровеют поцелуев следы. Под плач мотивы распускаются ожогов цветы. Так рви, сердце не жалей, руби. Пусть рекой прольется фон моей любви. Так рви, только дай коснуться губы. Без сомнения слова свои и чувства отзови, отзови. Коль не любишь, отзови, отзови. Отзови, коль не любишь, отзови. Но ты мальчишка совершенно другой, и рвать не станешь своей нежной покрасневшей рукой. В объятья манишь, я растаю и иголки сожму, и не загляну, я отдам любовь тебе одному. Так рви, сердце не жалей, руби. Пусть рекой прольется хон моей любви. Так рви, только дай коснуться губы. Без сомнения слова свои и чувства отзови, отзови. Коль не любишь, отзови. Капитан с пути безумием бодимый слышит голос нежный и знакомый уж до боли. Красоте ее лица противиться неволен. За бортом девица, попробуй не влюбиться. Слух ласкает песни звон, ему лучше смириться. За бортом девица, он хочет